You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium, available on Apple Podcast, Substack, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean, and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the Aurora Texas UFO incident. So it's over to you now, Mark, for this week's Out of This World experience.
The Aurora Texas UFO incident reportedly occurred on the 17th day of April in 1897 when, according to the locals at the time, an unidentified flying object crashed on a farm near Aurora in Texas. The incident, which was similar to the much more famous Roswell UFO incident that took place 50 years later, is claimed to have resulted in a fatality of the pilot of the UFO, with the locals also claiming that the pilot was not of this world and that he was of alien origin. The pilot of the UFO was then buried at the Aurora Cemetery and a stone was placed as a marker for the grave. However, the stone has since been removed and the wreckage from the crash site of the UFO has been reportedly dumped into a nearby well, which was located under a windmill which was also damaged from the crash, while some of the wreckage also ended up in the grave with the extraterrestrial pilot. And adding further to the mystery of this event was the story of Mr. Brawley Oates, who in 1945 cleaned out the crash site debris from the well in order to use the well as an actual water source, but he later developed an extremely severe case of arthritis, which he claimed to be a result of drinking the contaminated water from the UFO wreckage that was dumped into the well. And so, as a result, Brawley Oates decided it was better to seal up the water hole completely with a large concrete slab, and he then placed an outbuilding over the top of that. In a 1980 interview with one of the elderly local residents, it was claimed that the entire story was fabricated and written as a joke in order to bring some sort of interest back to Aurora, as the town was dying economically. However, and more to the point, despite this claim, the incident has been investigated on numerous occasions, with one report, which was broadcast by the local television station KDFW Fox 4, along with two other reports being aired on cable television. And although the Aurora Texas UFO incident has gained attention in UFO lore as one of the earliest recorded UFO crash stories, its authenticity does remain highly dubious and is often debated. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this Alien Contact episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I am a medium, a ufologist, a true crime buff, and a man with a very dark and disturbed sense of humour, who the other day pushed a woman over at the bank when she asked me if I could check her balance. But just to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every week, usually on a Friday night, though occasionally on a weekend, allowing for bank holidays and busy weeks, I do a podcast on the many wide and various subjects that fall under the Unexplained banner. These subjects include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of other paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, serial killers, the darker side of some past celebrities, and the occasional missing person that often goes unnoticed. So, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review or an opinion of this subject matter that I can reply to, a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell. Or if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. And if you get I'll try that one again. And if you get a few free minutes, perhaps you might like to check out my social media groups and pages, including Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, which are filled daily with all things unexplained and crime. I'll put the links to some of my socials in the description. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the misadventurous story surrounding the Aurora Texas UFO incident, and this week's necessary disclaimer. Well, to be honest with you listeners, this story is pretty much a PG episode, but as with all my shows, you listen at your own discretion. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, made me realise the other day that a Freudian slip is when you say one thing but mean your mother. But anyway, let us get back to the story. According to Wikipedia, Aurora is a city located in Wise County, Texas, in the good old United States of America. And according to the United States Census Bureau, the town covers a total area of 3.7 square miles, or 9.6 kilometres of land. As of the 2020 census, Aurora had a population of 1,390 people, with 356 families residing in the city, and offers a variety of attractions and activities for visitors and locals alike, with some of these attractions including the Aurora Cemetery, which is known for the supposed alien gravesite, details of which I will go into shortly, the Balloon Fiesta, a popular event that showcases the beauty of the area's natural landscapes, the public art, with the city being home to beautiful public art installations that add to its artistic appeal, its local cuisine boasting a variety of ethnic and independently owned restaurants and offering a taste of local flavours, and hiking, with the popular Horseshoe Trail offering stunning views for outdoor enthusiasts. And, according to a few other websites, Aurora is a unique destination that offers a blend of history, culture and natural beauty, whether you are looking for a peaceful retreat or an exciting adventure, with these activities and attractions meaning Aurora has something to offer for everyone. The Aurora Texas UFO incident all started with the phenomenon of the mystery airships, or otherwise known as the phantom airships, which happened when thousands of people across the United States of America claimed to have observed from late 1896 through to the middle of 1897 various light-shaped objects floating in the sky, with some reports of these alleged airship crewmen and pilots usually being described as humanoid in appearance, although some witnesses claim that the crew to some of these phantom airships were to be from Mars. It has been frequently argued that these mystery airship sightings could not have represented genuine airships, as there are no officially documented test flights of long-range powered ships, or airplanes even, of any kind in the United States from that period of time that are known to exist. But not only that, it would have been impossible, not to mention irrational, to try to keep such a thing a secret, and although several experimental airships had been manufactured and tested prior to 1896 to 97 reports, the technology of the day at that time could not possibly have produced airships with the capabilities that people were reportedly seeing during that period. During the 1896 to 97 mystery airship wave, there were many attempts to explain away these sightings as misidentified celestial objects, hoaxes, pranks, publicity stunts and hallucinations, with one man suggesting that the nocturnal lights were nothing more than a swarm of lightning beetles, while others believed that the observers were merely seeing meteors or bright stars and planets in the skies. And a noted debunker of the airship phenomena, the astronomer and director of the Dearborn Observatory, the Professor G.W. Howe, was certain that people were looking at Alpha Orionis, which is otherwise known as Betelgeuse, which is a prominent star in the constellation of Orion. There were, of course, some of the airship reports that were proven to be pranks by using balloons or kites with lanterns or candles attached to them, which were launched by practical jokers, and so initially most journalists of that period did not appear to take the airship reports very seriously. However, as these sightings continued, several newspapers started to cover the story with genuine wonder and interest, while others were still more sceptical and even hostile. In 1896 and 1897, some of the newspapers suggested that it was an extraterrestrial hypothesis which was to account for the appearance of the airships, with such reports from 1897 being printed in either the Washington Times, which speculated that the mysterious airships were, and I quote,
"A reconnoitring party from Mars,"
and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch's suggestion of the airship was that, and again I quote, "These may be visitors from Mars, fearful, at the last, of invading the planet they have been seeking." I will be doing a full episode on this subject called What Were the Phantom Airships of 1896 later this year, and if you are listening to this show later in 2026 or beyond, it is show number 194. After this first short break, in part 2 we will look at the Aurora Texas UFO incident itself and the various investigations that followed.
Ghost Planet Network, broadcasting from the other side, ready to tune in to terror. The Ghost Planet Network is your new home for original paranormal content, streaming straight from beyond the veil. We have got it all: spine-tingling stories, chilling documentaries, and real paranormal investigations from the world's most haunted hotspots. Perfect for believers, skeptics, and anyone who loves a good scare. Join the Paranormal TV revolution. Get unlimited access for just £12 per year. Tune in now. Email us at neil.hapra@gmail.com to sign up. That's neil.haprc@gmail.com.
On the 19th of April in 1897, an article in the Dallas Morning News, which was written by the journalist S.E. Hayden, described a UFO crash which was said to have hit a windmill on the property of a judge named J.S. Proctor 2 days earlier on the 17th of April at around 6 a.m, resulting in its crash. The headline of the Dallas Morning News piece was titled "A Windmill Demolishes It," which recounted the startling events of that early Saturday morning, and according to S.E. Hayden, who had spoken to local witnesses, the, and I quote, "early risers of Aurora were astonished by the appearance of the airship that had been, and again I quote, sailing through the country. The craft in question, which was described as cigar-shaped, was flying both incredibly low and very slowly, suggesting to the many witnesses that it may have had some sort of mechanical trouble. The journalist S.E. Hayden also reported that the mysterious airship, as it glided closer to the ground, suddenly collided with the tower of Judge Proctor's windmill, which was located in the northern part of the town, which then resulted in a terrific explosion, causing debris to be scattered over several acres of land, the windmill with its adjacent water tank being completely destroyed, and even Judge J.S. Proctor's flower garden got completely demolished. But what of the pilot, I hear you ask? Well, according to a report made by the Army Signal Service officer named T.J. Weems from nearby Fort Worth, the pilot was said to be not of this world, speculating that it may have been a native from Mars. However, one of the most fantastical claims was made by the journalist S.E. Hayden when he reported as to what lay buried amongst the wreckage, saying that, and I quote, "The pilot of the ship is supposed to have been the only one on board, and while his remains are badly disfigured, enough of the original body has been picked up to show that he was not an inhabitant of this world." Not only that, further details that gave this strange incident some weight was that documents that were found on the pilot were reportedly written in, and again I quote, unknown hieroglyphics that no one has been able to translate. However, regardless of what the pilot's background was, it did not survive the crash anyway, and so was buried with Christian rites at the nearby Aurora cemetery, with all the wreckage from the crash site, which was constructed of an unknown metal resembling somewhat a mixture of aluminium and silver, and was estimated to weigh several tons, being reportedly dumped into a nearby well, which was located under the damaged windmill, while some of it ended up with the alien in its grave. It was also noted, again by the Dallas Morning News journalist S.E. Hayden, that soon after the event, the town of Aurora was buzzing with people from all over the area, coming to view the wreckage and collect specimens of the strange metal. As the decades rolled by and the world changed around us, the story of the 1897 Aurora airship crash was slowly pushed into the background and ended up as just a strange tale that was spoken about amongst local families. That was until 1935, when Judge Proctor's property, including the aforementioned UFO-damaged windmill, eventually changed hands and was purchased by a man named Brawley Oates, who, inadvertently, I must add, added another layer to the oddness of the Aurora Texas UFO incident. It all started when Brawley Oates thought it would be a crackingly good idea to look for a usable water source on the property, and so decided to clean out the rubble from the old well on his newly purchased land. And yes, it was the very same well into which the airship debris had been dumped almost 40 years earlier. And once he removed all this rubble, he then attempted to utilise the well water he had discovered. However, his attempts were very short-lived, as over time he began to develop an unusually severe case of rheumatoid arthritis, which was a debilitating condition that began to afflict him daily. So, making an assumption, he became convinced that his illness was as a direct result of drinking the well water that he had deduced had been contaminated by this strange metallic wreckage that had been submerged in the well for decades. So in 1945 he then took the definitive action of sealing the well shut with a heavy concrete slab, which was then described with the year, and he then proceeded to erect an outbuilding on top of that. However, in doing so, he potentially, and probably even without realising it, sealed away any remaining crucial physical evidence for further generations of ufologists and paranormal investigators. Whether this rheumatoid arthritis, which affected Brawley Oates, was a genuine effect of the unknown metals or some other form of radioactivity, as some people much later speculated, or if it was just a coincidental health issue which was attributed to the local UFO legend, no one knows for sure, and to be honest, I doubt we will ever know. Moving forward to 1973, and the Aurora UFO story came back into the public awareness, and another investigation was launched, largely by the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON for short, which was led by the aviation writer and MUFON director Bill Case. On an interesting side note here, the Mutual UFO Network is a US-based non-profit organisation which is composed of civilian volunteers who study reported UFO or UAP sightings, and is one of the world's oldest and largest organisations of its kind, claiming to have more than 4,000 members worldwide, with chapters and representatives in more than 43 countries and all 50 United American states. MUFON is currently headquartered in Cincinnati and holds an annual international symposium and publishes a monthly MUFON UFO journal, with the group claiming to have more than 500 field investigators and specialised teams to investigate any possible physical evidence of extraterrestrial craft. However, the organisation has been criticised for its focus on pseudoscience, with critics saying that its investigators failed to use any scientific method. The network itself trains volunteers to interview witnesses, perform research and draw conclusions from the evidence, and although investigators are not paid, they must pass both an exam based on a 265-page manual and a background check. This 1973 investigation back into the Aurora UFO incident started with the investigators interviewing Brawley Oates himself and documenting both his story about the well and his debilitating arthritis. The MUFON investigators also managed to track down some of the surviving residents who had been children back in 1897, and although their memories were somewhat faded and the witness accounts did vary, a few of them did recall that their parents forbade them from going anywhere near the crash site, while witnesses say they remember seeing a craft with some trailing smoke. However, although the witness accounts were compelling, the real Eureka Gold moment would come from the Aurora Cemetery, when the investigators located an unusually singular weather-beaten grave marker or headstone very near an old oak tree in a somewhat solitary section of the burial ground. This gravestone, according to the reports and sketches which were made at the time in 1897, appeared to show a rough engraving of what looked like a saucer-shaped craft with portholes, and by using metal detectors, the investigators did manage to register significant metallic readings beneath the ground, which then led them to suspect that pieces of the wreckage, indeed perhaps those which were collected in 1897, had been buried alongside the pilot. So the next step was to exhume the grave and examine its contents. However, after MUFON sought permission from the Aurora Cemetery Association, their request was turned down, with the association citing concerns regarding both the disturbance of the cemetery and potentially unleashing dormant diseases like the spotted fever that had ravaged the town the years before, during the 1940s. On a quick interesting side note here, spotted fever, which is otherwise known in this particular case as Rocky Mountain spotted fever, or RMSF for short, is a bacterial infection which is passed on from the bite of an infected tick. Most infections of spotted fever happen in the spring and summer when ticks are active, and doctors treat it with antibiotics, and with prompt treatment most people recover from it in a few days. Another reason for the refusal by the Aurora Cemetery Association for exhumation of the body was down to the fact that the occupant of the grave had received a Christian burial, which would also present itself with various legal obstacles that come under Texas law, with one of those obstacles being a requirement to notify the next of kin of any exhumations, and as you can probably imagine, in this particular case, that would be impossible. So, for our MUFON investigators and researchers, it was back to the old drawing board. The researchers then turned their attention back to the old oak tree in the somewhat solitary section of the burial ground. However, when they returned, they found to their somewhat dismay that the alleged alien gravestone had disappeared. And not only that, but any subsequent sweeps with their metal detectors over the same area as previously mentioned also yielded negative results, which then led to the speculation from the investigators that whatever metal had been buried there before had somehow also disappeared or been taken. The investigators did report the stolen gravestone to the relevant authorities, but it was never recovered. After this second short break, in part 3 we will look at the sceptical opinions into the Aurora Texas UFO incident and how the town of Aurora deals with its popularity today.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk. Or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
Of course, the Aurora Texas UFO incident isn't without its doubters, with the most significant voice of scepticism coming forward in a 1979 Time magazine interview, with one 86-year-old Aurora resident named Etta Peegs, who had pretty much lived in the town all her life, claiming that the whole story was, and I quote,
"written as a joke to bring interest back to Aurora. The new railroad bypassed us, and as a result, the town was dying."
with her basically laying to claim that the whole UFO story was just pure fabrication and a hoax cooked up by the original Dallas Morning News reporter and journalist S.E. Hayden. Etta Peegs also added that at the time Aurora was in a desperate need for both some attention and economic revitalisation after it had suffered a complete series of devastating blows, which included the aforementioned spotted fever epidemic, a destructive fire, crop failures and its loss of a railroad connection. So in order to help reinvigorate the area a little and put the struggling town back on the map, they created a sensational story about a crashed spaceship and a Martian visitor. Personally, I would have just given the town some sort of open day, but maybe that's just me. Etta Peegs also asserts that the story then, over the years, just sort of took on a life of its own. Although the 1972 disappearance of the alien gravestone from the Aurora cemetery does seem mightily suspicious in that its disappearance coincided precisely with the renewed investigation by MUFON, what also fuels the conspiracy fires is the fact that a replacement stone which was positioned sometime later was also reported stolen in 2012, which of course only deepens the plot. Today, the specific location is marked only by a large embellished boulder, so try and get that in your pocket, which is placed near the old oak tree in the somewhat solitary section of the burial ground. With this simple menhire over time becoming not only a focal point for pilgrims and the like drawn by its legend, but it is often decorated with an array of trinkets, coins, flowers, candles and handwritten notes that are offerings left by visitors paying respects to the anonymous alien. On the 19th of November in 2008, Tim Oates, who was the grandson of the aforementioned Brawley Oates and the now owner of the property with the sealed well where the UFO wreckage was purportedly buried, allowed investigators to unseal the well in order to examine it for possible debris. Water was taken from the well, which tested normal, except for large amounts of aluminium present, and upon closer inspection, it appeared that the well had no significant contents. However, it was stated at the time of the investigation that if there were any large pieces of metal, they would have been removed from the well by the past owner of the property. And as confirmation of this, the remains of the windmill base were indeed found near the well site. And in addition to this, the Aurora Cemetery was examined again, although the Cemetery Association still did not permit any exhumation. By using ground-penetrating radar and photos from prior visits, an unmarked grave was indeed found in the area near the other 1890s graves, but unfortunately the condition of the grave had over time so badly deteriorated that the radar could not conclusively prove what type of remains existed underneath the ground. However, the landowner did give the investigators some unusual pieces of metal he had found, which, after some forensic testing, concluded that the pieces contained mostly aluminium, along with one other unknown element. On another quick, remarkably interesting side note, ground-penetrating radar, or GPR for short, is a non-intrusive geophysical technique that uses radar to image and survey the subsurface by employing radio waves to capture images below the surface, allowing for the investigation of underground utilities and features without disturbing the ground. GPR is widely used for applications such as locating pipes, cables and other structures beneath the surface, and makes it a valuable tool in various fields including construction works, archaeology and environmental studies. The official recognition of the Aurora Texas UFO incident came in the form of a Texas Historical Commission marker, which has been placed at the entrance of the Aurora Cemetery. And while detailing the cemetery's factual history, the marker also mentions the, and I quote,
legend that a spaceship crashed nearby in 1897 and the pilot, who was killed in the crash, was buried here.
With this state-sanctioned recognition giving the story a degree of official authenticity, even though it is widely regarded as folklore. And near the alleged crash site itself, there is a designated spot which is now called Area 114, which serves as a photo opportunity for tourists and is complete with alien cutouts and UFO imagery. A couple of things about the Aurora Texas UFO incident which I found quite amusing, but in a nice sort of way, was that the locals and townspeople have affectionately nicknamed the supposed alien pilot as Ned, which has made visiting Ned's grave a unique tourist attraction. And as of 2018, the Dallas attorney, called Stratton Hawes, has put out a $1,000 reward for the return of the original stolen grave marker from 1972, in the hopes that its recovery might finally prove some insight one way or another regarding the ET that couldn't phone home.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 189, we are going to be looking at the disappearance of Moira Murray. On the 9th of February in 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student named Moira Murray at the University of Massachusetts Amherst disappeared after a car crash on Route 112 near Woodsville, a village in the town of Haverhill, New Hampshire. She was completing her junior year at the time, but has not been seen since, and her whereabouts, still today, remains unknown.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes. Proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. The pronunciations of all the names of places there was mine. But I have to add, at least I didn't get the years wrong. I said 1897.
I can't help
Linda
it.
said 9.
I'm
so pleased that I did. I'm so pleased that she did that. The voices in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes, and Denise Poolar, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at Ghost Planet Network. And of course, a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast, but if you do know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, as well as true crime, unsolved crime, and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I'll see what I can do. I'll also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast, if they're ready for me to do so, of course. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. No AI was used or harmed in the making of this or any other episode of Mark's Unexplained World. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.